the detail. So this is really unusual. There's a guy named Marc Headley
who emailed us and also sent us a couple of copies of a book called Blown for Good, Behind the Iron Curtain of Scientology. Apparently, this man's mother became a member of Scientology when Mark was 7 years old. He grew up around some of the most famous celebrity members. And then he would join an elite Scientology paramilitary organization at 16, and by his 30s, he was a key staff member at their international management headquarters. After 15 years of over 100-hour work weeks, mental and physical abuse, and being paid under 50 cents an hour, he had experienced enough Scientology, and he made an escape from the heavily guarded compound in Hemet.
Yeah, 15 years he was there. Now, the reason we bring him up is in this book, Blown for Good, and we just got the book. I was just going through it, just walking to the men's room and back, and then there's a story about him in the Village Voice,
which we're going to give you some excerpts from, because we're going to read the book. By the way, he's going to be on the show tomorrow at 6 in studio.
But this is, the Scientology cult is, I guarantee you, 1,000 times more bizarre than you could have ever imagined. And what these celebrities do, like Tom Cruise, is 1,000 times more strange than you could ever imagine.
Oh, now you're creeping me out.
Oh, I have never read about behavior like this in my life. I can't imagine it. It's really weird.
It's funny. But anyway, there's a dedication page in this book, and that's why Mark sent us the book. And it starts out by crediting Conan O'Brien and the former Late Show for dissing celebrity Scientologists and blowing the cover on the entire 1984 Orwellian bull I was being fed. And then the second paragraph, John and Ken on KFI AM 640 in Los Angeles for being who you are and slowly deprogramming me daily over a 2-year period. You guys opened my eyes to what was happening all around me.
What's odd is...
And then next is Depeche Mode.
Conan O'Brien.
Good company, I guess.
Yeah. Well,
those are the three that the book is dedicated.
Well, I can't wait to talk to him about this, because he would wear a Walkman while working in the Scientology compound, listening to our show. And we have very rarely talked about Scientology because nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors except the people there. Obviously, it's a sick, weird cult, and Tom Cruise is a freak. But beyond that, there's a lot of cults out there. And the only reason Scientology gets any attention is because of its celebrity connection. Now, having said all that, apparently our attitude about life slowly seeped into his brain, and he suddenly realized,
what am I doing?
What am I doing here?
Well, when you're 7 years old and you're indoctrinated into the cult by your mother.
Now, this will teach them to allow radio and television signals to reach the compound. Because what he said in this Village Voice article is that he saw Conan O'Brien do a lot of Scientology jokes, and it was rather jarring because he never saw Scientology celebrities put in a bad light before. Because I guess inside that compound,
you're in the cocoon,
they're
right?
Worshipped.
You're listening to the choir.
So he starts watching Conan O'Brien, and they're making some nasty jokes about whoever. I don't know what the jokes are. We'll find out tomorrow. And all of a sudden, between those jokes and us percolating in his head every afternoon on the Walkman, he decided to get out. The thing is, the Village Voice did a story.
Yes, and by the way, the Village Voice does reference the dedication page where they mention what John said, but they have described the John and Ken show in a way that I've never seen before. Secretly listening on a Walkman while he worked to John and Ken, a comedy duo.
A comedy duo?
How about that, like Martin and Lewis?
Very impressive.
Is that a step up from Shock Jocks?
I think so.
Yeah,
remember, this is the New York Village Voice, so I don't know what familiarity they would have with the show.
None.
But that's how they described us in their article about the book.
Nobody can figure us out. They just don't.
They probably listened to one podcast for half an hour. This has got to be a comedy show.
This can't be
Listen
serious.
to that guy.
Are they serious?
But this is their article that they wrote has a great title. Tom Cruise told me to talk to a bottle. Life at Scientology's secret headquarters. Now, if that doesn't grab your interest.
If you don't think Tom Cruise is a complete flaming lunatic and this Scientology isn't the weirdest cult in the world, listen to this. Tom Cruise was going to do his auditor training and needed someone to audit.
I like the way they use accounting terms in their Scientology.
What does that mean, auditor training?
don't know exactly. I've heard about it. I don't know how to explain it. Well,
You'll have to listen tomorrow, Terry Ray, when he's in studio.
Okay.
We're not going to be able to explain for you Scientology terms.
Yeah. Here's what Cruz did, according to Headley.
Apparently Cruz was going to audit on Headley.
He had to practice.
He was selected, he says, for 2 reasons. Although he'd already spent several years at Scientology schools and working for the church, he had participated in little auditing and had completed few of the courses that Scientologists pursue as they travel up the bridge to a higher status. Also, because he was still only a teenager, Headley was thought to be a minimal security risk.
I think auditing is their version of psychoanalysis.
And I think it's a way when you pass for you to work up the ladder.
Yeah, to get inside your head to see how you're absorbing all the Scientology lessons. So Headley says, now again, this is what Tom Cruise was doing. You do a lot of things with a book and a bottle. It's known as the book and bottle routine. Cruise would instruct Headley to speak to a book, telling it to stand up or sit down, or otherwise to move it somewhere.
Quote, you do the same with the bottle. You talk to it. You do it with an ashtray, too, Headley says. You tell the ashtray, sit in that chair. Then you actually go over and put the ashtray on the chair. Then you tell the ashtray, thank you. Then you do the same thing with the bottle and the book, and then you do this for hours and hours. We're not kidding you, Terry Ray. That's what this guy says in his memoirs.
Headley said this went on for 3 straight weeks, hours and hours each day. Tom Cruise instructing Headley to speak to inanimate objects, requesting the objects to get up and move on their own, and when they didn't, he told Headley to move them anyway and then to thank them.
Headley said yes for hours and hours. In God's name, why, I guess the interviewer asked him. Well, it was to get your intention over the bottle. Your what? It was supposed to rehabilitate your ability to control things and to be controlled.
Then there was more involving doorknobs.
Wait, I'm working on this water bottle. Give me a moment. Get over there. Get in that chair. Dasani, get in the chair.
I looked it up, and you progress past talking to the bottle, and then you are supposed to be able to move people, and it's kind of like a behavioral modification.
Yeah, and actually, Headley says this is all over the internet. If people want to know this is not, an incredible, startling revelation, but it's just funny to hear that he experienced it with the actor Tom Cruise in person. That makes him a cut above.
Tom would ask me to find a place in the room that I could easily communicate to. I was supposed to look around the room and tell him the place I picked out. I might say, the doorknob. And he'd tell me to go over there and touch it. And then he'd say, okay, now do it again with another place. Headley said after a couple of weeks, he did begin to wonder about trying to make objects move by talking to them. But this was Tom Cruise, not someone you would question.
Yeah, again, he's like 17 years old, and he knows that's why he was chosen, because they didn't want someone else who might run off and tell the National Enquirer that Tom Cruise was telling them to talk to a bottle for the last 3 weeks.
But everybody's 17 years old, and nobody ends up putting up with this for 3 weeks, except very few who get sucked into the cult, and this guy got sucked in by his mother.
And remember, it started when he was 7 when his mother joined, so he had a long time of being subjected to this and being brainwashed. So it's a little bit like why J.C. Lee Dugard didn't run for it,
Yeah, this is the really fascinating part about human nature that I never understood until really the last few years, is that if you are capable of controlling someone's mind, you can get them to do the most bizarre things for long periods of time, completely against any of their self-interest. I had no idea you could have that much mind control over somebody, and people will go along with it.
Well, you're not in any way a follower. And there are people who are just programmed out there to be some kind of a follower.
I guess
like Nancy Garita.